What is high key? What is low key? Yeah, it's definitely the last time I'm going to sing on the internet. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Image Talk. Today, yes, we're going to be talking about high key and low key images. Thankfully, they have nothing to do with music, so you won't be hearing me sing anymore. So I'm just going to give you a really quick definition of both types of styles. There are definitely more in-depth videos out there that you can really get into if you want the definition, but I'm just going to try and keep this nice, light and simple. So low-key images are your darker images. They're going to be high contrast, high shadows, generally lower highlights. Doesn't mean no highlights, but generally lower. Really good for fine art photography, really good for distressing scenes. Quite sort of harrowing. And in reverse to that, you've got high key images. Now your high key images are going to be your much more brighter scenes. They're going to be lighter, they're going to be softer lighting, lower contrast, generally used for things like, if you think like wedding photography, family portraits, those kind of bright, bubbly, lovely scenes. So you might have gathered by now that me and words don't go so well, so I think we'll just jump straight into the images and I'll explain as we're going along. So we're going to start with low-key images. We're going to start with this beautiful blah, 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 just to prove that me and words don't go so well. We're starting with this beautiful black swan image here. What I did here to capture this was lower the exposure, and so I underexposed this image. There was a high intensity of morning light hitting the swan, but just in certain places. By lowering the exposure here, I actually hid a lot of the bird and I hid a lot of the background, which was what I wanted. Behind this subject was quite a messy background, but also because of that, it was quite a dark background, which meant that just by lowering the exposure a little bit on my camera, I was able to get an almost black background in camera, which was great. The highlights from the sun were just hitting the side of the face of and the bill of here, which was really nice and really highlighted the eye really well. You've just got a little bit of body down at the bottom there, and I think this creates a really dramatic feel. It's certainly what I would call very arty, and again, it really draws you in. There's obviously not much to look at in terms of the subject, so you really get drawn into that eye, which is looking straight at the camera, and that beautiful bill there. So my second image is this egret image. This is a backlit image. What I really like about this is the detail that I've got coming through the wings, and I've only got that by using a low-key style shot. So again, I've underexposed the image. I've used the backlighting to my advantage because it was going to create just a silhouette anyway, so I've kind of enhanced that by underexposing. What I also like about this is the high contrast of the low-key style shooting has created a really sharp bill to contrast the nice delicate balance of that wing. It's also helped with the reflection in the water. And again, you can see by the feet there are some a type of duckweed, I don't know exactly what it is, but by underexposing, I've removed a lot of that distraction, and you're really just as an audience member just drawn into looking at those feathers. Most of this was achieved in camera. Obviously, I did do some post-processing, and I have changed it to black and white just to really add to that contrast. So the last two images have been quite an extreme example of low-key photography. This third image I'm going to show you is of two pelicans, and as you can see, it's still low-key, it's still got high contrast, it's still very dark and moody, but it's not as dark as the others, and you don't have to go to the total extreme to have a low-key style. So what I wanted to do here was correctly expose for the pelicans. The sun was just rising and the light was hitting the birds, and the highlights would have been very blown out had I exposed for the whole scene. So by underexposing, I correctly exposed for the pelicans, and I darkened the background behind and the foreground reflection. By doing that, I've drawn away some of the distraction that you would get from the background, and you can really just focus in on the pelicans and their reflections. What I like about of not going to the full extreme and leaving a bit of the darker color in there was you're getting a bit of that golden light orange tint in the background. And I think that reflects the muddy scene that these pelicans were on. So these pelicans were stood in, again, in a bit of tidal estuary, and it was very muddy where they were. And obviously the pelicans themselves are a little bit disheveled and a little bit muddy. So by leaving the darker tones in there, I'm kind of amplifying that dirty, muddy feel in the image, which I quite like. Again, very little was done in post-production here. A lot of this was done by just lowering the exposure and correctly exposing for those white birds. You can see, obviously, some of the highlights are still there, so low key images doesn't mean there are no highlights, just means there are fewer overall. And now to jump from the low keys to the high keys. So the first image we're going to look at in terms of high key style is this gannet here. So what I like about the style with this image, it's very bright, it's very airy, and because the bird is flying gracefully there, I like the weightlessness of the feel that this style gives the image. So I've obviously exposed correctly for the bird here, which is overexposed the background behind. The background was just a grey, cloudy sky, so it meant that I got rid of that distraction and I've just got the bird. It also enabled me to really focus in on the colour of the eye and a few of that yellowy tint on the back of the head there, and it really just draws your eye to that bird. So the second image I'm going to be talking about is this red-tailed black cockatoo. I'm a really big fan of this image. I've used the high key style essentially to correctly expose for the black bird. So I've blown out the background, which again removes any distraction, and you really just focus on the bird itself. You can see the detail of the fan tail there, that beautiful, what would normally be red, but I've put it in monochrome because I think it just adds a little bit more detail and texture. I think because of the unconventional pose within this image, using a high key style really adds to the sort of art feel you get from looking at this, rather than following the conventional, here's the picture of a bird. Now again, my final image of the high key series, as it were, is less strong, and to prove that you don't have to go to the full extreme to create a high key styled image. So here we have two Cape penguins from South Africa, showing some tactile behaviour, sort of reaffirming their bond, as it were. Because the sort of tender, sweet moment of this high key style image is really nice. Just surrounding the birds with those highlights, that sort of soft lighting is very lovely. Again, because they're black birds, it meant that I could overexpose a little bit and correctly expose their plumage, which worked really well. And I think it just creates a lovely dreamy effect, especially with that glistening sea behind. It's very holiday-esque. So I think it really adds to the image, just increasing those highlights to help create that sense of dreamy. So as I say, both high and low key styles can be used for portraits and creating that more arty feel within your wildlife photography, especially when mixed with another technical element. So here I have a picture of a stilt, and I've used a slower shutter speed and a bit of movement on the camera to create a really fine art scene. And I think this can just really help elevate your photography from being a simple picture of a bird to something more arty. I know that was all a very quick and condensed breakdown of high and low key images. As I say, there are definitely more detailed ones out there. I just wanted to create a nice short introduction to the subject, as it were. I know I've not talked much about post-processing here. It is something that I typically try to avoid having too much to do. I'm not very good at sitting in front of the camera. I don't know how I'm going to edit this video. I will do videos further down the line about my post-processing editing, but for now I'm just keeping it really simple, really short, and I hope you appreciate that. So thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'm sticking with a double thumbs up. They're here to stay apparently.